Welcome to Off the Record News. I'm your host, Diana Longry. Thank you for tuning in. Off the Record News is brought to you live from the SCC studios out of White Bear Lake. And through a cooperative agreement, this program is also simultaneously broadcast to those studios out of the Roseville viewing area, the CTV studios. As a result of this cooperative effort, this program reaches out to and serves approximately 28 communities in the Northeast metropolitan area. Now, we also rebroadcast at other dates and times, so if you're watching our program on a date other than February 26th, well, unfortunately, you won't be able to call in with any questions. However, I invite you to get a hold of me on Facebook, where I'm there 24/7. Now, this evening we have quite a lineup of video and news articles to talk about, and I have with me Mr. Joe Waters, who has been on the program a number of times, but he's always a wealth of information, so I want to thank you, Joe, for being here again tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and you called me up the other day and you said, you know what, there's something going on at the legislature I want to talk about. And I says, yahoo, let's talk about what they're doing in the legislature.
Yeah, well,
so what's up?
What was going on? I was actually looking at the League of Minnesota's website. I was looking for something else. I came across this thing called the Street Improvement District Act. Basically, there's two bills, a House File 745 and Senate File 607, which were actually introduced in the 2013 legislative session. And essentially what it does is it creates a improvement district. Now, this improvement district is similar to a school district where you take a geographical area of a particular city and you say, I'm going to assess that particular piece of property for street improvements. And I thought, wow, that's rather interesting. And then without really digging into the legislation, the first thing that crossed my mind is, and it's simply because after watching the Maplewood City Council meeting, there's going to be, on March 24th, there's going to be an assessment hearing for another street project that they're doing. And I thought when I saw this, if this street improvement district goes through, are we still going to have special assessments? And
good question.
Yes, because to me it was a form of double taxation. Not only would you have, but if this enabling legislation, and what I mean by enabling legislation, the legislature will pass this, but then the city has to go through a process to pass it to become an ordinance within that particular city. We'll kind of talk about that as time goes on. But my concern was if this enabling legislation passes at the Capitol and the city is allowed to implement this street improvement district, are you going to be assessed for the street improvement district, and are you going to be assessed for special assessments? We're going to talk about that as we go along.
And I know that when it was introduced in the legislature previously, that a city was given an option that they could select one or the other, that they didn't have to, that they did the special district. They didn't do special assessments or something. There was some sort of an option feature to it, but I don't know how they may have changed that along the way.
It doesn't look like the legislation has changed because it had some readings in 2013, but it kind of stopped after April 2nd of last year. But digging through this, because reading that, it basically says not exclusive means of financing improvements. So a city could still do street assessments on the properties, but if they take this legislation, the street improvement, implement the street improvement district, they cannot do special assessments. It specifically says that. It's basically in subdivision 7, or excuse me, subdivision 8. It basically says a municipality may not impose a special assessment for projects funded with street improvement fees.
Interesting.
So that made me feel a little bit more comfortable. But as you know, as I'm kind of looking at transportation options that are out there, I mean, we pay a transportation fee on virtually every bill that we have now, because it's a 0.25% sales tax that's added to like your cable, maybe not your cable bill, but I know your wireless bill, and so forth. You have wheelage tax.
Yes.
Hennepin or Ramsey County doubled their wheelage tax for 2014 from $5 per vehicle to $10 per vehicle. So that's money that also goes towards transit. So I'm all for improving our infrastructure, but I know they're looking for other ways municipalities and governments are looking for other ways,
creative ways
to get money to do street projects because the gas tax is not as reliable as it once was, simply because cars are more fuel efficient, people aren't driving as much, and
That's
so
right.
forth. So,
exactly.
you know, to me, it just became just another vehicle to try to pull money out of the taxpayer's pocket to pay for who knows what.
Well, and it's interesting that you had called me up to say that this was something you wanted to discuss, because coincidentally, at the recent Maplewood City Council meeting, they had a resolution on their agenda, which they didn't really cover a lot about what it was all about, but it really works hand in hand with what you're talking about. And this is their resolution in support of the Move Minnesota campaign. Now, I believe that we have a clip of this from the council meeting where they're introducing this particular resolution, and then we'll be able to also bring it up on our character generator later on as well. So let's take a look at our clip.
The resolution supporting the Move Min campaign, and I think that's going to be Mr. Thompson or Mr. All, City Manager All.
Mayor and Council, thank you. This is an item, Mayor, that actually you suggested that we put on the agenda for consideration. Council, Move Minnesota is a campaign that 11 cities now have signed on to, and a number of the mayors and cities are suggesting, in this resolution puts us on line to say transportation is a priority in 2014, and so our legislature will be dealing with that. And as part of that, you heard a couple of meetings ago from Ramsey County and the St. Paul Chamber of Commerce about East Metro Strong. One of the things that we're looking at is making sure that with a transportation system that we are economically competitive, and most importantly that our friends on the Western Metro don't get their inappropriate share, and that we in the East Metro get our appropriate share. And so this motion really supports the Move Minnesota, making transportation a priority in the 2014 legislative session. It's a resolution that is in your packet. And really just puts you as a council on record as saying transportation is important to you, and you want to see the comprehensive package put together for funding. With that, we recommend the resolution.
Councilmember Cardinal.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion we accept the resolution.
Second. Do it together.
Okay. Councilmember Cardinal moves approval of the Move Min resolution of support. It's seconded by Councilmember Juneman. Is there any discussion? So I have discussion on this. I just wanted, do you have discussion, Councilmember Cardinal? Okay. That I think it's really important. I'm glad it's about to pass here, but I'm really glad it is. Transportation is a huge issue. It is what a lot of mayors are working on these days, and it is very important that the East Metro get its share of the funding, and I think right now we have not been doing that, and so this will help move that along. We think that this session is going to be a short one, so this will probably not be the session for transportation, but it will be next year.
So what I find fascinating about this is that there's literally no discussion about what the actual entire agenda is of the Move Minnesota. And I'm not making any comments about whether or not it's good or bad or indifferent, except that the fact that there is no discussion about what is the agenda of this group of lobbying people to the legislature. And when you look at the resolution of the council, which we can bring that up and show it just very simply here. Let's take a look at there you go. Okay, so basically it just says that we support the efforts of the Move Minnesota campaign and coalition, which can be found, and then they give a website. But the council doesn't actually talk about that agenda in the least bit, and what kind of impact would it maybe have on Maplewood or not have on Maplewood, or should that agenda be expanded, or maybe they just support part of it? I don't know. None of us know. I don't know that they know.
Well, this is actually being pushed by the League of Minnesota Cities. Now, Mr. All, city manager of Maplewood, basically said 11 cities are supporting this. I've got something rather interesting. I got a piece of paper here that I copied right from the League of Minnesota Cities website. And they've got a whole campaign of how this whole thing can be presented. They've got draft letters. You know, folks, if you want to see this, you just go to League of Minnesota Cities or lmnc.org for League of Minnesota Cities, and you type in under the search bar, Street Improvement District. This is one of the sheets that's going to come up, but it's basically going to tell you that they've got sample letters, or sample resolutions that you can give to your councils, that they can send in support to your legislatures and so forth. But when I look at, Mr. All saying there's 11 cities, I count 92 cities as of February 20th of this year. So if he's saying there's 11 cities, is he talking 11 East Metro cities? You know, I don't know. But
well,
if he's trying to say it's a small number, like I said, I counted 92 cities in this one, and I actually count 16 cities that did either emails or just simple letters of support. But Maplewood apparently did a resolution. So either that was the resolution that they brought up but never discussed, or they did a resolution sometime in 2013 when this legislation was originally written. Again, we don't know, but like you said, they never even discussed this. This is essentially, what they're supporting is essentially a tax increase on your property for street improvements. And if you go in, if they still have the street, if they approve this and they enact this, and it's got to be similar in order for the city to enact this as an ordinance, it's no different than any other ordinance where you have to have a public hearing. It's got to be posted for no less than 30 days, and then the city's basically got to mail out a letter or on the ordinance to all the property owners in the affected district. So they've got to identify the district. Plus, they have to have a plan. They have to have a detailed plan saying this is what we're going to do. But as you know, as I look at that, it's like I'm not even sure the council even knew what they voted on. They just basically said, let's do it and move forward. Yes, transportation is a very important issue. A lot of businesses are saying, you know, we need to improve, you know, we need to upgrade our infrastructure, we need to widen roads and so forth.
Which, of course, is kind of contrary to that policy of the safe and living streets, or whatever they call it, where they want to narrow those streets.
Yeah, exactly. You know, exactly.
And so now let's pull up our next screen here, because you see now this is actually from this Move Minnesota. It talks about what their agenda is, and so this is, you're not going to be able to read all this, but I just want to at least give you a flavor of what is included. That this alliance, and keep in mind, this alliance, it's my understanding, is funded by city governments. So it's actually a bunch of city governments, I think, that are together lobbying the government for more money, for more taxation.
Yeah, well, that's not surprising, because this you know, if you, again, you look at the 2011-2012 legislature, they were more friendly to the taxpayer. This 2013-2014 legislature is more friendly to city governments.
That's right. And then so some of the stuff has to do with the tax having to do with transportation and how it's distributed. And I think you got that the flavor of that when they said they wanted to have more of the money coming to the east side. Perhaps that is a good thing. But it also talks about supporting increased authorization for trunk highway bonds with additional revenues for debt service on the bonds. Well, this is certainly something I think that a city council should be talking about, because while we're talking about state bonding, that could have an impact on maybe our overall bonding and the viability of our standing in the financial community in the United States. I mean, this is an important municipal issue, and yet this council didn't talk. And you know, we have a former 14-year legislator on our council now, who's the mayor,
I was about to say, isn't she the mayor?
Yes, and we have a skilled litigator, and we've got a council person who's been on there for decades, almost.
It seems like that with a little break.
You know, and I'm thinking, where's the questions on behalf of our city and our citizens? Now, as we move along in this document here, let's take a look here. We've got also that they support an annual fee for electric vehicles to compensate for the lack of payment of motor fuel tax. Except that, aren't we trying to encourage people to have alternate vehicles? So if you're going to be taxing electric vehicles because they're not consuming fuel, isn't that contrary to a sustainable community driven?
It's contrary to a sustainable community, but the biggest fear that they have is electric cars don't use gas. So their thinking is these cars are using our roads and they're not paying for it.
Ah, I see. And then, of course, then we get to the issue that Mr. Waters brought up initially, which is the next item on our list here, which is that the Alliance supports the authorization for municipalities to create street improvement districts. So you see, buried in all this tax stuff is the districts idea.
Correct.
So
correct.
there you go. And then
keep in mind, this legislation is based on, right now, I can give you an example. In Minneapolis, if you have a piece of property in Minneapolis that does not pay property taxes, you still pay a sidewalk fee and you still pay a street light fee. And this legislation is based off of those two chapters. I believe it's chapter 429 that allows the city to institute a sidewalk fee. So this legislation is based off of something that's already on the books. But they can't create these districts without enabling legislation from the legislature.
that's right. You know, and I was thinking I actually had a list of here, I bet you I found it, the membership list. Let's see if I've got this membership list. Okay, here we go. I'm going to, before we scan over to it, I'm going to...
You're too excited. You're tripping over your own two words.
That's right. I'm going to zoom in so that our viewers can at least see somewhat of what we're looking at here. So let's pull this up, though. You can see the 2013 membership list. So, Mr. Waters, this gets exactly to your point as to 11 communities only. I don't know. We're taking a look here. We have nearly 250 members of statewide coalition, including local units of government, business, labor, the construction industry, and advocates of all modes of transportation.
Yeah,
but yet, please take a look. You know, we're scanning down, and so far all I see are governmental entities of some type. We still keep...
City of Maplewood.
Oh, there it is, City of
Right.
Maplewood. But I don't think I saw the City of Roseville on there. Imagine that.
Well, that's interesting because they're ones that signed this also sent in a resolution of support.
Yes. Oh, and then in the private sector, here we can see the private sector individuals. We've got, well, 3M, they are a gold sponsor. That must mean that they paid big money. And
well, you don't get the gold.
Unless you paid the gold.
Exactly.
So anyway, so then this gives you an idea that, you know, there's...
I'll give you, when you talk about gold sponsors,
Yes.
because I was looking at, there's others as well. I mean, there's HDR, there's Kimley Horn. That name should sound real familiar.
Yes.
They do a lot of work for the city of Maplewood. TKDA, Tolles, King, Duval, and Anderson, in St. Paul. And these are companies that do a lot of work in the infrastructure field.
Definitely. And it's important to them that these types of initiatives move through the legislature and that they're supported by the and the League of Minnesota Cities I see is on here.
Well, who do you think spearheading this?
Of course, that's right, because that's one of their specialities is trying to figure out how they can best get more resources for government.
Well, when you talk about entities that represent cities, I mean, obviously the League of Minnesota Cities. You've got the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, Metro Cities, the Minnesota Association of Small Cities, and then you have, again, the Minnesota Transportation Alliance, Move Minnesota. So you've got both public, mostly public, but you also have some private heavy hitters supporting this as well, because obviously they would not be supporting this if they didn't see some sales opportunities down the line.
Yes, and I think that you've really hit upon the interest, sales opportunities down the line, employment possibilities and opportunities down the line.
And, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing business, but I think the public should understand what this really entails and why these people are supporting it.
And it really does come down to that issue of transparency and openness in your transactions.
Correct.
And really what the conversations are about.
Correct.
Rather than talking in
Generalities.
Secret talk that the rest of us don't understand, that actually have to tune into off-the-record news to figure out what do they really mean.
Well, we're the government ease decoders, so.
Yeah, that's right. We wear our decoder rings at all times. So anyway, but this is a piece of legislation that I think we're going to keep tabs on.
Correct.
And follow it as it goes through the legislature. Maybe we'll end up having some film footage from some of the hearings, if there are hearings.
There have been hearings. I mean, there have been hearings. The legislature started yesterday.
Yes.
But there have been hearings on this matter. I'm trying to go through the archives.
Ah, good.
At the because the state does archive their videos of their meetings, so I'm trying to go through their archives and just see exactly what was discussed and who was there and so forth. So hopefully we'll be able to bring some of that film footage back to you.
Yeah, that will be very good. And I know that with a lot of our viewers, they may not have the time or the technology to necessarily go back and take a look at some of that, and they certainly would appreciate the work that you do to pull that stuff out.
Well, like I said, I think people should be informed. Like I said, I agree transportation is a major issue. That's how we get our goods and services to market. But I think, we're coming up with all sorts of ways to pay for this, and people don't seem to realize. I'll give you an example. I've got insurance on my cell phone, and it's normally $9.95, and suddenly this year was $10.67. I couldn't figure out why. So I did a little check and called them back, and they said, oh, there's been a sales tax added to your insurance plan on your cell phone. And I thought, well, that's kind of odd.
Mm-hmm.
But then, but again, it's just being a smart consumer. If I decide I don't want the phone anymore, it's up to me to get rid of it. But on the other hand, if I think the money's going to a worthwhile cause, I'll continue to pay for it.
Well, that's exactly right, because that is, again, the consumer has a better idea of how they want to buy things if they understand what it is they're purchasing, what are the allocation of funds going towards. It just makes simple sense.
Correct, exactly.
And that kind of brings us as a segue into our next topic, which Mr. Waters, you were on a few weeks ago, and we talked about with regard to the city of Maplewood, and just what are they going to do with the public access TV, and what are they going to do with the joint powers agreement with all the other cities that are part of community access TV here. And we only got partway through some of our video, and so we've got more of that we want to continue with, but we've had some questions from citizens asking some questions about some of the clips we showed previously. So I've taken out some of those select clips so that we can look at that in a little more detail. But even with all of that in mind, at this last city council meeting, I believe that the city council and the city staff has taken the first step to their independence from public access TV here out of the White Bear Lake Studio viewing area. And we've got film footage on that as well. And I think that when we look back at some of the film footage from the council meeting just last month and listen to some of the comments, and now we come forward to just this last Monday and hear what they're doing, I think it suddenly starts to make sense. It's amazing how that works out.
Yes, exactly. It's amazing.
It's amazing. It's kind of like, one of my favorite things I had as a child was those connect the dot books, where you had all these dots and you didn't have a clue what the picture was until you started connecting the dots. And eventually, when you connected the dots, you go, oh, now I understand. Government's kind of like that too.
Yes.
You got a lot of connect the dots to figure it out.
I was just going to say, for me, it's kind of like, hitting your head against the wall. It's like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
After you did it 22 times.
Well, let's take a look at our first clip. And this is, we've got it labeled Public Access number 1. Because this is where they're starting the discussion, where Chuck All, the city manager, of Maplewood is saying, well, you know, we're kind of coming to the council with not much information on this, and yet we all know that a year ago when Mr. Antonin was the city manager, you know, that they really did in depth in the back scenes look at how were they going to withdraw from the joint powers agreement with the commission here that puts through the public access channels. And so I'm not quite convinced that they put this on the agenda not really knowing what's going on. I don't believe it. But let's take a look at this first clip.
An important discussion, hopefully to be continued. I think there'll be more. Next is the discussion of the Ramsey-Washington Suburban Cable Commission, which I believe staff is going to lead.
Mayor and Council, thank you. We put this item on the agenda tonight, not with a lot of information, but just something to make sure you as a council are understanding of kind of direction, and we want to be sure that we're touching base with you where we're going. If I might take a step back and just kind of explain kind of the thought process that we as staff are looking at and what we want you to consider in looking.
So first, now, of course, the new mayor says, well, this discussion is going to be led by the staff. You know what? Every discussion up there is led by the staff. That statement is a goofy statement because every discussion is led by the staff up there. The council...
Didn't you get the memo? We elected staff to do the work. The people that we chose on the ballots are just there to rubber stamp.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So then, finally then, Mr. All fesses up and says, oh, this is staff's plan. So let's continue on with the rest of his comments.
At you know, our city being part of the Cable Commission, each one of you members have talked about some concerns and issues. From the standpoint of us as staff, and I've asked Karen and Michael and Melinda to kind of work together on this, and so the four of us are actually over the next year going to kind of look at this, and this is not unique to the Cable Commission. This is something I'm challenging every department head to do, and that is to look at something from an efficiency standpoint. And so, is it efficient? And so,
An important discussion.
So there we go. So as I mentioned last time when we started talking about this, is that from a year ago when City Manager Antonin was on board, he had his idea about that we were going to challenge it, our participation as Maplewood in the Joint Powers Agreement and with the Cable Commission on an issue of community standards, that somehow they are not protecting the community standards of Maplewood. Well, that argument didn't go very far and didn't really have a legal basis to it. So now we're trying a different argument. Well, now we're going to try it from the efficiency standpoint because that'll sound like we're good stewards of the dollars that belong to the citizens. Now, what do you think of that one?
My head's spinning. It's like, okay, community standards. What community standards? You know, are these standards published that we can all look at and, you know, challenge in an open forum? And then I hear from an efficiency standpoint, it's like, what are you trying to tell me, that the color's not bright enough, or, you know, the content's not long enough, or the content's too short? When I think efficiencies, how can we do it better?
Right.
How can we use existing resources to do it better? And if we can't do it better with our existing resources, you know, then we have a plan B. But when I think efficiency, I look at how we can do things better. How can we constantly improve? And so far, from what I've heard and what I've been told, that doesn't sound like it's an efficiency argument. It sounds like they just want, to me, it's just they want out, period.
Yes, that's
and they
exactly
want
right.
the money to do whatever they want. That's not efficient.
And it struck me that this argument is coming from a community, a city, where they've got the project construction of their new police station wing being supervised by the IT guy. And so is that efficient?
Is he qualified? I don't know.
That's right. See,
Anyway,
so here we have people talking about efficiency when maybe they're not really addressing efficiency within their own building
their own
themselves.
staff. You know, it's kind of like you've got the Director of Citizen Services also holding the title Director of Communications. And in my mind, those are two distinct, separate responsibilities.
Yes.
And, you know, there's very little, there's some crossover because the Director of Communications needs to explain to this, you know, get information out to the citizens about, you know, elections and business registration and so forth. But I don't see the tie-in or the crossover between the two.
Yep, exactly. So let's continue on with the next clip.
Our cable commission from Maplewood gets about $300,000 from Comcast because they use the city right-of-way. So it's a right-of-way fee. Michael Thompson, he administers the right-of-way fee for all of the various users in the city. So if some private company comes in and wants to cut a hole and use the street, they charge them a fee. Well, similarly, we do that with Comcast because they go citywide. And so that's $300,000 that come to the citizens of Maplewood. And we as a city, simply because it's what we did last year and the year before, we simply turn that $300,000 over to Ramsey Washington Suburban Cable Commission to use as they, which we are, 25% of, see fit. Okay?
So now when we look at the Joint Powers Agreement, which I have up here, let's just take a quick look. And it says here, and I'm trying to make this large enough so you can kind of see it from home, but it says that the Commission is hereby delegated primary responsibility for community cable television programming within or for a geographic area of the member of the Commission. Well, of course, Maplewood is a member of the Commission, and because we're one of the largest communities that is within the whole area covered by this, we actually, I believe, have like about a 25% voting block of the power.
So we got 1/4 of the power.
That's right. We have 1/4 of the power. Okay, and yet Maplewood can't figure out what to do with it, right? You know, okay.
Well, that's amazing. The way I've seen the last couple of years, I mean, they know how to handle power pretty good. What is it wrong? They have competition now?
That's exactly right. And then it goes on to say that should any member withdraw, so let's just say, should Maplewood withdraw from the Commission, the withdrawing Maplewood will assume all responsibility for community cable television programming within or for the geographic boundaries of that Maplewood municipality. So what this says, and Chuck All will get into this in a later clip, is that if they withdraw, then Maplewood has complete discretion as to how they are going to relay services relating to community public television. Now, in some communities, when municipalities have taken that action, it comes down to basically the municipality saying, we will only allow positive programming to be played on the channels. We want nobody who is going to say a negative thing about our municipality. So if you like that particular way of looking at things for public access TV, then I would suggest that you move down to Cottage Grove, because you will be able to experience that down in Cottage Grove, because that's exactly the outlook that they have on public access down there.
Interesting.
So
in essence, if you're not praising the king, as they say, we don't want to hear from you.
That's exactly right.
We don't want you challenging us. Just accept what we say and move on from there.
That's right. And who's going to say, though, that somebody wants to put on a fishing show, that they'll deem that fishing shows are not sufficient or efficient enough to play on the airwaves because not everybody cares about fishing.
Well, I like dogs. Are they basically going to say, no, you can't have a dog show on there, even though you use the Maplewood Parks? We're not going to let you...
But you see where all of this could lead, okay? Especially if you're using efficiency as your criteria, because everybody doesn't fish. Why do we need to have a fishing show?
Exactly.
Because everybody doesn't have a licensed dog in Maplewood.
Well, only
We
47%.
don't-
47% of the households only have cable.
Yeah, there you go.
So since we're not at 50, we're not gonna show it.
That's another good argument. So let's take a look at the next clip.
Taking that money, and again, that's money that is given to the Cable Commission to create public education and government access for us. And so, in effect, they get $600,000 a year from Maplewood. Now, rather than discuss how that PEG money, the PEG money, is used, which really sometimes, we agree with or we disagree, I mean, we use it. And one of the things that, as you know, Karen is working on is trying to really enhance what we do. My focus is more on that right-of-way.
Now, we have shown film footage on this show where Mr. Chuck All said exactly those same words a year ago about what Miss Karen Guilfoyle was going to be doing and what she was doing, okay? But it's been a year now, and he's saying the same exact words, and where's the proof in the pudding? Because I will tell you that when I watch the channel where I see what the city's playing for their programming, they play the same little promo on repairing the streets that they have played for 9 months.
Yeah, it's kind of, hopefully you got that comment from this past Monday's meeting, because they talked about that, how you see Michael Thompson over and over again. It's like it's in a loop.
Yeah, it's in a loop. That's exactly right. Well, let's continue with our next clip. Okay?
Tell our story. If it's great to tell our story. If our staff, they put great stories together, but they're only getting to 47% of our residents. Whoops, that's not efficient. If I guess if I was a baseball player and I was batting hitting 47%, yeah, I'd be good. But that's not our goal. Our goal is to be in the 90%. People, we can't make them watch, but at least they'll have it available. Only 47% have that available. And so the plan and what I want for you as a council to talk about tonight is, are you comfortable with us exploring? I don't know where that's going to go. I mean, we don't. I mean, we have lots of options, but we as staff are going to look at those options. And Council Member Abrams is on the board. She's, you've appointed her on there, and we very much support that and have for years. The staff actually suggested that having a council member on there would be good, not to disparage Kim Facile. She did a wonderful job for us, but having that interaction. And so I believe that 2014 will be an issue, number one, for us to kind of understand and get a better understanding. Because
So first of all, in all of that, did you pick out the one statement that was patently false? I can share it with you what it is. He says that only 47% of the people in Maplewood have public access available to them. You see, through the agreement that we have, through this public access studio and the joint powers agreement and the franchise agreement, everybody in Maplewood, except for some seniors who live in some of the senior high-rises that aren't properly wired, everybody in Maplewood can get free public access TV. They have it available to them if they choose to sign up because it's free. It's available to everyone except a few folks who are in buildings that are not properly wired for it. And so their statement that, well, because it is only, only 47 people elected to have it, and the others can't have it, that's wrong. That's false. Absolutely false.
Yeah.
And the city of Maplewood even promotes the free PEG service for the public access TV.
Mm-hmm.
And these channels, they even promote it in their city monthly newsletter.
Interesting.
And so the city knows that everybody can get it for free.
Mm-hmm.
They know it. They publicize it. So anyway, let's go on to our next clip here.
obviously a private company, at least in terms of not being subject to data requests, things of that nature. However, they are part of this franchise operation, and I think it's germane to the discussion. So, and I think it can only help them when we're talking about a right-of-way discussion. So they're going to want to beef up their numbers however they can, and if the same right-of-way use is going through for those other services, I think it might help them because, like you said, you know, they're lagging from where they were in terms of cable TV subscribers. So I think it might be a question of just ask.
So perhaps Comcast isn't interested in giving any more free service, as we were talking about. So I'm not quite certain that that argument that Comcast is going to want to give out the numbers is actually completely valid, because Comcast, I don't think, wants to actually advertise you can get it all for free.
Oh, of course not. I mean, you actually called on them. They'll actually try to steer you in a different direction.
That's right. Now, I understand that we have a caller on the line. Caller, thank you for calling in. Questions or comments?
Mayor Longery, Joe Waters, thanks for doing this excellent show, because, I mean, I think we all know that Chuck All and his bag lady, Nora Slawik, and Kathy Duneman, the middle finger lady, what they want to do is they want to cut off the ability of people to express their opinion. And now that there's so many people watching shows that talk about all the schemes that these scoundrels who are the administrators of the city of Maplewood are up to, and they have the video footage to play and expose their lies and their disinformation, they want to cut that off because they want to have, these overlords want to have complete control of the message. On that issue of the community center, isn't it true that less than 2% of the Maplewood residents have memberships at the Maplewood Community Center, and yet the city dumps incredible amount of money on general fund and taxpayers' money from the building of the community center and for the operation of the community center? My question is that efficient? Isn't there example at Maplewood, if you look at their administrative staff, if you look at their programs, there's huge examples where many members of the community can't afford and can't participate in what they're going on. How can the city even talk about efficiency as a goal, but there is so many problems all over on that? Thank you.
Well, that certainly is a good point. Yes, I mean, if only 2% of Maplewood residents are members of the community center, which, by the way, is an enterprise fund, it's supposed to break even. How efficient is that?
It's
because
not very
it doesn't
efficient.
Break even.
Right,
First
it's not
of all.
very efficient, because I know businesses that would be saying, you know what, we've carried this animal long enough. Time for it to go. They either shut it down or try to liquidate or sell it, or they would do something. They would simply say, you know what, if we can't get to whatever percentage we need just to break even, it's being taken off the books one way or another. Yeah, so if you're saying 47% is not efficient in cable viewers, but 2% is, the math is wrong.
Yes. So now the next clip we have Councilmember Abrams, who, as you heard, is the newly appointed commissioner to the Cable Commission, the representative from Maplewood to the commission. And so now she is making some comments and I believe a pledge as to what she's going to do to wrestle some information out of Comcast.
We have a question from Councilmember Abrams.
Actually, not a question, but just a comment. I wanted to say that I just this week received a 3-ring binder from the Cable Commission with the bylaws and all sorts of information, and I've just started kind of going through that. I've got the first Cable Commission meeting in March on my calendar. I've started meeting with individuals who have information concerning Cable Commission, and so I'm getting up to speed, and I know that I would suggest that this is one of the topics that, as a council, we may want to talk about at our March retreat, that we could put that on the agenda. And certainly as a member of the Cable Commission, I would feel very comfortable asking for that kind of information and would expect that we would be able to get it without any kind of difficulty. So I'd like to suggest that I try that at that first meeting.
Excellent. Okay, good.
Thank you.
I think that's a great idea to have it on the agenda at the retreat. Now,
So yes, let's put this on the agenda of the retreat. Now, does the Maplewood City Council televise their retreat so you can actually hear what they're talking about during the retreat?
Well, we televise it.
Yes, we do, because here at Public Access TV, as citizen volunteers, we've taken the time to get trained in on how to run a camera and take time out of our day as volunteers, and we actually go there and we tape it. We've been doing that for about 5 years, and so just to let you know, we will be there to tape what their conversations are about Public Access TV, because it's important that we all know, not just that they know. So let's take a look at our next clip.
retreat. Now, Mr. All, I'm trying to understand the numbers. Maybe I didn't hear it all right, but so $300,000 for Comcast is that we could spend in other ways, and then $300,000 that we spend on PEG. Can you? So what of this is flexible? The whole 600,000?
Mayor and Council, yes, there's two 300,000s, and really the right-of-way fee is very flexible. We have an obligation to provide service. Okay, you as a council have decided simply because that Ramsey Washington Suburban Cable Commission, and how many governmental units are part of that? 12, is it? Okay, that we're one of 12, and so we've abdicated that service to them and that decision, and simply because that's how it was set up, we can do that. We have a lot more authority over that money if we choose to exercise that, and we're going to explore that. Mayor, I don't know that I've got a direct answer to your question, how much of that, simply because there's lots of different ways to provide service. Some of the ways may not be acceptable to you as a council. It's simply saying, no, that doesn't work. On the other hand, I hope to say, well, gee, we're going to reach and at least make it available to more than 47%. I think we can do that. You as a council will, through the year, or maybe even next year, simply because I think the franchise agreement expires this year, and we don't want to go on our own to have that agreement. That's something that goes way beyond our ability to get up to speed on, and so we'll make sure the Cable Commission, and that will be border specific, so it'll be Maplewood's franchise, and if they give it to Comcast for the next 10 years, then we'll have that, and we can do with it how we see fit. So.
Okay, so this is what I got out of all of that. Well, gee, we really would like to have 100% control over the money rather than just, well, like on the Cable Commission, they've got a 25% vote. They don't want to, work cooperatively and collaboratively with the other community cities.
Which is more efficient.
So they can work in partnership, yes, in efficiency, of course. They want to instead have 100% control, so they're in charge 100%, but they don't want to do it before the franchise agreement has been renegotiated, because, oh, heaven forbid, they wouldn't be able to negotiate their own franchise agreement, so we're going to stay with them long enough so that we can use their expertise and the Cable Commission's attorneys to negotiate that franchise agreement to get the best deal. Then we'll consider pulling out.
Once all the hard work is done.
Yes, once all the hard work is done.
Once we get the volume discount and all the hard work gets done, we'll pull out, take our basketball, go home, and build our own court, and run our own basketball team.
Yes. So, I don't know. That doesn't sound like being a good neighbor now, does it?
It doesn't sound like it to me.
No, it doesn't sound like that to me either. Now, I understand we have a caller on the line. Caller, questions or comments?
Oh, I don't know how far along you were talking about the last, most recent city council meeting, but it was interesting that only 4,000 surveys were sent out in a city that's got 39,000 people that live in it about the parks. That's one thing I wanted to bring up.
Oh,
this business you're talking about, they were already talking at the last city council meeting, too, about the fact that they're already looking to the Roseville Cable Commission, so they can basically bail on this system that they've got set up. If people really care about keeping the cable, you know, that you watch your show and watch Bob and so on and so forth, they better start going over the city and raising the stink or calling their city council members. One other thing, Marley Abrams was talking about something to do about the police commissioner and all that stuff, and she was not going to support the people who she's supposed to represent. She said, oh, she would take and side with the police commissioners, you know, those people, you know. That was the other thing that was interesting. And one other last comment, I don't know if you brought up or not, it was interesting at the visitor presentations, when Mark Bradley got up to talk at visitor presentations, Kathy Juniman, out of her slide of her, had to say something. She says, oh, yuck. I don't know if you heard that or somebody got a copy of that, but that's pretty inappropriate for a city council person to be talking about an individual and using slang like that about how she didn't want to be seen or see him up there talking at all. I thought that was pretty rude.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what all you covered tonight so far, but all they're trying to do is basically keep the citizens not informed. They don't want to tell them anything, and they sure don't want to see anything from anybody up at SCC is what it sounds like. And people better start waking up and paying attention to what's going on around there.
And I think one of the best things that our viewers can do, don't contact the Maplewood City Council members, because, you know, they've been talking in the back room already with the staff. I believe they got their plan already worked out, and they're talking about, yeah, we're going to talk about it at the retreat, but that's just to cement what they've already decided, I think. But I think the best plan for our viewers is to go and talk to the other cable commissioners. Talk to the other cable commissioners, because they know the value of public access TV. They know the value of all the communities working together cooperatively. They know the value of using the pooled resources, and maybe those commissioners then, as a result of that, can then go and speak to the Maplewood City Council, officials to officials. And that's what I think would be a good plan of action.
Hey, it's a good idea. Very good idea.
So let's take a look at our next clip that we have here.
With provisions that, yes, we have to provide service. The level of service is a decision that actually the Cable Commission makes for us now, but I think you as a council, through Councilmember Abrams, are going to understand that a lot better over the next year or two as we discuss this issue.
Well, thank you.
And see, that goes exactly to my point, is that if they have 100% control, then they will choose what kind of programming they will provide. They won't provide it as you have it currently now. So let's continue on to the next clip.
So there's the $300,000, and then there's the franchise agreement being up, and then there's this partnership we're in, right? Which do we have to stay in that partnership, or can we? Is that another thing we can do? Is change that?
Mayor, my understanding, I think we could cancel it with 30 days' notice. I mean, we've had Mr. Cantridge start looking at that, and that's something that, you know, it may not be something we want to do, but it's going to be one of the options that we will explore and say, you know, we simply can do it our own. There's, I think, St. Louis Park and Blaine do their own thing. Burnsville does their own thing. However, that means, holy cow, we're going to have to staff up to do that, too. And so we're going to have to deliver service. And so it may not be a great solution, but one that we can do. And so we need to look at all of that. And so that'll be, you know, our 10, 12, 14-month study, whatever we do. But I think 30 days is, to answer your question, we can cancel in 30 days.
And there's also other.
So we can staff up. Oh, wow, we're going to add a new department. As we mentioned before, and we showed film footage from a year ago, they were talking about the communications department. Now let's quick and bring up our screenshot here, because this is from the Joint Powers Agreement. And I know that the city staff there at, whoops. Well, anyway, I guess it has gone. But anyway, okay, so the city staff knows that in the Joint Powers Agreement that it says that you have to withdraw by October 15th, and then you're in until the end of the year. and that if you withdraw after October 15th, you have to stay in for the next following year because it's already been budgeted for. They know that. So let's go on to our next clip.
So 30 days.
And there's also other partnerships we could join.
Yes.
Yeah, so that may be option on. Councilmember Juniman?
Okay, so now this is getting to where the caller alluded to what the council now this last Monday was talking about. There she was a month ago saying, well, aren't there other ones that we can join? And last time around we were wondering, what the heck is she talking about? Well, now we know. So let's play the clip on the contract, because this is what the caller was talking about, is that they're looking now to go and contract with that public access out of Roseville. Let's take a look.
I know, the city manager, I just want to comment on, from the change from our current process to using sort of a pool of videographers, how that's going to work.
Mayor and council, thank you. Mr. Folds has put this together, and it really is, it actually kind of, if I might digress, it kind of goes to the efficiency requests that Councilmember Cardinal just talked about. We try to supplement our videography for not just these meetings, but all our commissions, all our meetings, and it's quite a task. And so what we've done is created a partnership with Roseville, or the North Suburban Corporation Cable Commission, and so through there they are providing the expertise and actually doing all the scheduling, all of the implementation, all the rebroadcasts, all the meeting replays, which takes a tremendous amount of staff time. So this really is one of those efficiencies. So spend money to be.
So now we know which station for public access that they think they're going to join, and that is Roseville. CTV.
CTV. It's rather interesting. I was just talking to another gentleman that works here, deals with programming here at SCCTV. He basically says, because I was explaining to him, I'm always looking at a council meeting the month previous. Instead of looking at the February council meeting, looking at the January council meeting. He says Maplewood can very easily program the most current council meeting or the most current commission meeting, and they just have to do the work. So I don't see how paying North Suburban Corporation is going to change anything. If you're not willing to do it here, what makes me feel confident you're going to do it over there?
Well, and you bring up a good point in that it always seems like the meetings are months and months behind on the replay schedule. Well, that's because the IT department head is busy supervising the construction of the police new construction wing. That's why, because he's too busy wearing a hard hat rather than taking care of IT.
Well, I'm not sure that, this is where I'm going to disagree with you, because I've watched other meetings when before construction got going, and they still were behind.
Oh, okay,
So,
I'm being too generous.
Right. And, your argument can be very plausible, but I guess my experience says something different.
Right, and even at the last workshop, they didn't have the sound on. And, by the way...
I was lip reading.
Yeah, you were lip reading, that's right. So I'll tell you, we have, I think, a lot to continue to discuss with this issue, because it is a serious issue, not just for people in Maplewood, but all of the communities that are served by the Ramsey Washington community channels. Because if Maplewood pulls out, it will substantially impact this station, this studio, and it's not just the Maplewood residents, but all of the communities within our area. So please stay tuned as other future shows we carry on with this topic. And Joe, I want to thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And for our viewers, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Suburban community channels in White Bear Lake, simulcasting through